again, let's continue on and finish up what we started last time. Somebody told me that for videos and things like this that it's better to keep the length of time down long, or not so long, because people lose interest, and so I don't want that to happen. So I figured that maybe what we ought to do, instead of putting multiplication and division together, we'd do them separately. So sorry about the extra video, but I don't want to be creating problems for people. I want this to help people. So let's talk about division. Now, to understand division, we're going to talk about it a little bit differently and from a different perspective than it's most often taught. There are some vocabulary words that you want to be familiar with, because when you hear these words, they will help you know that you are dealing with division. The three words that you need to be aware of is divisor, dividend, and quotient. Divisor, you may get the picture that divisor sounds a little bit like something we might divide by, divisor. That is what divisor is. It's the number we divide by. The dividend is the number that we're dividing, and the quotient is the answer. So when you hear those words, and I don't think you'll hear them outside of a math classroom very often, but when you hear those words in a math classroom, you know that you're supposed to be dealing with division. So it may help you recognize what operation you need to perform in certain circumstances. One thing that's really important to get, it's a basic idea, but it relates to where we really use division, where it actually has a practical application for us. If I have a situation like this, $493 divided by 17, what I'm looking for is how many full groups of 17 are there in 493. Now, so you can maybe get a better picture of what I'm talking about. When I first was teaching, during the summer, I worked at a pop bottling plant. And we just bottled pop. That's what came out, were bottles. Now, if you're a shift supervisor, you might be bottling 6-packs. You might be bottling 24, a case of 24 or 12-pack. You don't know what you're bottling, but the problem is, as those bottles go around the deal, it goes through the counter and it just counts bottles. So as a shift supervisor, it's your responsibility to provide the information that's requested from your shift. And let's say you're doing cases of 24. Well, when you finish the day, you go to that number and read the number that's on that counter, and it's just a bunch of bottles. Maybe it's 875 bottles. And you are responsible, though, to put on your report how many cases there were. So what you have to find out is how many full groups of 24 there were in 875, because 24 takes 24 bottles to make one case. So let's talk about how we'll do that, why we do what we do, and maybe get you to a point so if you had that kind of a job, you'd be able to provide the information that your boss requires at the end of your shift. Couple of things that you just need to think about, and hopefully they're obvious, but if not, just think about it based on that idea I just gave you. If I have any number, I don't care what the number is, let's just pick one. Let's say 17, and I'm going to divide it by 1. Well, think about, based on that idea I just gave you, how many ones are there in 17? Okay, it's going to be 17. No matter what number I put in there. Any number divided by itself is going to be that same number. Okay, that's one place you can use that idea. Here's another one. Now I just picked this number, but how many 13s are there in 13? How many groups of 13 are there if I have a total of 13? Okay, 1. And everybody, I think, knows that inherently. Does it matter what number I put in there? No matter what number I put in there, when I divide it by itself, it's always going to be equal to 1. So knowing that idea, thinking about that idea of how many groups of something there are in something else, makes this kind of thing quite a bit simpler. And that's what I want to do. So I want to give you ideas that you can use to help make some of these things clearer, easier, so you don't have to have so much trouble with them. Now, when actually doing division, we're going to take a problem here, and guess what we're going to do? We're going to do just sort of the same kind of thing we did with multiplication, only we're going to be talking about division. So if I've got 24 divided by 2, well, instead of, I know you may be okay with this, and that's fine, but instead of having to deal with the big number, we're going to write this as 20 plus 4 divided by 2. And that's the same thing. But now it gives me numbers that are much easier to work with. If I take 20 and I divide it by 2, or in other words, split it in half, what am I going to get? Okay, I'm going to get 10. And when I take 4 and divide it by 2, how many 2's are there in 4? They're going to be 2. And so my answer is 12. Now, if I want to check my answer and make sure it's right, remember what we said? If you divide a number by another number, the number that you get should be, if you multiply these two together, you should get the number you started with. And sure enough, 2 times 12, and we can check that. 10 plus 2, 2 times 10 is 20, 2 times 2 is 4, 20 plus 4 is 24. So, in fact, that is the number that I wanted. Now, that acts as a basis for what we do in long division. And I'm going to go through and multiply something here, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Let's do that one again. Only we're going to write it using this division symbol. I've got 24, and I'm going to divide it by 2. Now, understanding the things that we've talked about up to this point in time is essential so you know what you're doing here. This 2 right here represents a 20. And so instead of having to worry about the 24, the whole thing, I can do this part of it at a time. So I'm just going to deal with the 20. So I'm going to ask myself, how many times will a 2 go into this 2, which represents 20? It's going to be 10, so I'll put my 1 up there, and that will be the 10's place. Now, to find out how much of my total that I used when I put that 1 up there, I'm going to multiply this 1 times this 2, which what I'm talking about here now is 10 times 2, which is 20. I'm not going to bother putting the 0 in right now, but I just want to kind of get you a feel for how we do long division. Now, I'm going to subtract this 2 from this 2 so that I see if there was anything left over when I divided. And you'll see in a minute why that's important. But there's a 0. Now here on the 4 is the 4. We haven't done anything with that yet, so we want to make sure we divide 2 into the whole 24, not just the 20. So now we bring down this next one. And we're going to see how many 2's there are in this part of it. Now if you think about it, that's kind of like what I did when I divided it, split it into 20 plus 4. So 2 will go into 4 twice. Then I multiply to see how much of that I used. 2 times 2 is 4. And when I subtract, I get 0. So 2 will go into 24 12 times. That's kind of how we do long division. Check this number here into the first number there. And we go through that way. Okay, another thing we need to be aware of and be sure of is how we write our remainders, because it doesn't always go in evenly. The example I used of the pop bottling, you don't always get exactly a full case of pop. Sometimes you just get part of a case. So let's just deal with that quickly, and then we'll move on. If I have 47 divided by 5, I want to know how many groups of 5 there are in 47. Now, we'll pretend we all know our times tables really well, so we know right off the bat that there are 9 full groups of 45 in 47. So we put our 9 up there. Then, to see how much we've used up out of the 47 we had, we multiply these two together. We get 45. To see if there's any left over that we didn't use, we subtract. Get 2 here and 0 there. Now, there's nothing left over. So what we have here is 9 full groups of 2 or 5 with 2 left over. Now you remember in division you're used to putting an R with the 2 up there, but that doesn't really tell us what we're dealing with. So we want to do something that's going to be a little more meaningful. So what we're going to do is, remember, we're looking to know how many full groups of 5 there are in 47. Well, there are 9 full groups of 5. There are 2 left over, but what we're interested in is how many full groups of 5. So what we've got is 9 full groups and part of another group. Well, the part is 2, but it's 2 of 5, 2 out of 5 of another group. And does that sound familiar to you? Have you ever heard anything that sounded like that? Yeah, a fraction. So we write our answer 9 2/5. And you'll find that there's a lot more emphasis today when doing division to write your answers this way, because it gives you a clearer picture of what the division process is all about and when we would use it. Okay, now, what do we do when we get even bigger numbers? And that's where we're going from now, is we're going to talk about division when there are much bigger numbers, which means we're probably going to have a little more trouble with this. So let's say we have 574 divided by 23. Well, goodness, I don't know how many groups of 23 there are in 574. So I'm not going to make myself try to worry about doing that, because I think I'll be confused. So what I will do, though, is I'll break this down. Now I know there won't, if I just look at the 5, that would be 23 into 500. I have no idea what that is. If I look at the next one, that's 570, and that's still a problem, but I'm going to do like I did before and just deal with part of it. I'm going to see how many 23s there are in 57. Well, that might even be a problem for me. It depends on how well I know my numbers. If I know my numbers, fine, I just do this and I don't worry about it. But if I don't know my numbers, I'm going to use what we learned before about estimation and rounding. I'm not going to have to worry about the 23. I'm just going to look at the 2. Now that 2 there represents 20. this 5 here, if I'm just dealing with the 57, that represents 50. So now what I'm going to be looking at is how many 20s there are in 50. I don't even have to look at that. What I can do is I can look at how many times 2 will go into 5. Because the 20 and the 50 both have a 0 on the end, so I know that's going to be there. So I'm just going to check how many times the 2 will go into the 5. It goes twice, I hope. Now sometimes we do this and it doesn't quite work out like we thought, but we don't care. We're talking about a situation where the numbers are a little more challenging, and so we've got to find a way to deal with it. This gives us a place to start, so we're happy to have a place to start. Now, I only used the 2 for the estimating, and I do have that 3 to take care of here. So when I go to do the next step, which is multiply, I have to multiply the 2 times the 23. Both of those numbers. 2 times 3 is 6, 2 times 2 is 4. It wasn't too big. We'll check now to see if it was too little. The next thing we do to find out how much is left is to subtract the 46 from the 11, or from 57, and we get 11. My brain got a little bit ahead of myself there. So, there isn't too much left over, so we're okay. So, the 2 worked. Okay, now, we still have some left over, so like we did before, we bring that down. And there's a pattern here, and it just repeats itself. We pick the number. Here was the 2. We multiply, we subtract, we bring down. Pick the number, multiply, subtract, bring down. Pick the number, multiply, subtract, bring down. Pick the number, multiply, subtract, bring down. And you just keep repeating that process. That was just some little ditty there. So let's try and do one that's going to require a little bit of a different effort from us. Let's try 589 divided by 43. This might, well, let's try it. Okay. First of all, I see how many times will 43 go into 5? That's 500, I don't know. But when I try 43 into 58, I can see, I think that goes one time, and I'm pretty sure it does. So I put my 1 up there, then I multiply, times the whole number. To find out what's left over, I subtract. It works. And then I bring down the next one. Now this was a little more challenging. 43 into 100. Wow, that's where I need that estimating kind of thing, because I'm going to check, I'm going to use this 4 and consider it a 40. I'm going to see how many times 4 will go into 15. Now I know 4 times 4 is 16, so I'm going to try one less than that. Got my number. Now I'm going to multiply. Now I'm going to subtract. And I check it to make sure I'm okay. There's not too much left over, not too little, so I'm fine. And, oh, there's nothing left to do here. So now we have 13 full groups and a part of a fourth group. So we've got 30 40 thirds. So you try the first one and the first one, and that's just using estimating and rounding to try something. Let's see if we can find one that doesn't quite work out so well, so you can see what I'm talking about. Let's say I have 749 divided by 38. Those are big, ugly numbers. Kind of scary. So let's see what we can do. I'm going to try 3 into 7. I don't know if it'll work, but it gives me a place to start. I'll be able to tell whether it worked when I get finished. So 3 will go into 7 2 times. So that's just rounding and estimating. Now when I multiply, I've got to multiply 2 times the 38. Well, 2 times 38 is 76. So guess what? It was too big. But I don't care because I didn't know what to do. I was just trying something. It gave me something to try. And now I know what to do. That's the thing about it. It gave me some information, so now I know exactly what to do. I'm going to move this down 1. Everybody understands this. Nobody's going to try to make you feel bad because of this, because you were just trying something. So now we're going to try 1 here. So when I multiply, I get 38. When I subtract, 14 subtract 8 is 6, and I borrowed 1, so 6 subtract 3 is 3. Sure enough, it was close, but there wasn't quite enough for another full group, so we had to stop here. Now, we're trying to see how many times 38 will go into 369, and this one is not fun at all. So maybe if I try 3 into 3, that's going to be a 1 there, and I know, I mean, it's going to have to be, wow. I don't know. See, that's the problem. So what I'm going to notice something here, and this is the kind of thing you want to learn to do because it can help you out. This number is almost 40, so if I round it, I'm going to round it to the nearest 10, so I'm going to be looking at 40. So now I'm going to check 4 into 36. Hopefully I know my times tables well enough to recognize that that's 9. Now I'm going to multiply. 9 times 8 is 72. Carry the 7. 9 times 3 is 27, and 7 is 34, and it fit. I'm okay. That worked out. Okay, so now I subtract, and sure enough, I've got part of 1 more group. So there are 19 full groups of 38, and this part of another one. Okay, spend some time reviewing this video, go through the notes so you get a feel for how to do this. It's important, it's something you're going to have to use. It's helpful to remember how to do it, so learn it and use it, and good luck with it, and hope it works out well for you. Thank you.